If your body is feeling imbalanced or asymmetrical or twisted, there's one area that you need to be able to access in order to fix these problems. And that area is actually probably going to surprise you because it's not currently in view. That area is your foot arch. And now I know that sounds crazy, but bear with me because this may be the key to fixing your imbalances. When we're moving through the gait cycle, there are joint actions that need to happen to allow us to shift from one side to the other. The problem is that people with imbalances and asymmetries and twists here and there have an issue with being able to fully get over to one side and be able to own that side before going back to the other. There's some hang up, there's some disconnect, there's some inability to access a certain phase of gait or space or joint position to allow them to do so. Because if they could access both sides of their body genuinely, they wouldn't have a reason to stay stuck, shifted over to one side or twisted into one side. The reason why the body is doing that is because it's stuck there. Let me break this down for you. As we start to take a step forward and load our body weight onto one leg, we're going to need to have this side of the pelvis turn towards the stance leg progressively more and more. But we also need this side of the pelvis to hike up a little bit, relatively speaking, and then the shoulder on that side is going to drop as we load onto this side. These are subtle movements but important because they allow us to fully get into this side of our body. Now the key is we have to be able to get out of that side of our body. And the way we do that is to find our foot arch on the ground, which cues us to push out of that side of our body. The key indications for someone being shifted over to one side is a higher pelvis that's rotated back on that side and a lower shoulder on that side. Now, the bigger indication for the lower body is the pelvis being hiked up on that side, and it's likely the pelvis is also rotated towards that side, but we'll be able to determine what's going on here with a little bit more objectivity in a second. So let's imagine we have someone that is shifted over to the right side. Do you see how their center of gravity, their center of mass would be more over the right foot? Well, what that's going to do is it's going to actually push our body weight onto our feet like this. So the right foot arch is actually going to be in a higher position relative to the left, which will be lower. This is very common. Everyone has one foot arch that's at least a little bit higher or lower than the other one. No one has perfectly symmetrical feet. The exception may be flat feet, but even then you do see differences from side to side in the foot presentation. Take a look at it from this angle. If I were to lean on my right side, do you see what that would do to my feet and my center of gravity position? My foot on the right would probably raise up while my foot on the left relatively drops. So what I need to do is teach my right foot arch to work with muscles on the backside of my right pelvis to help get me to push back over to the left side and find the inside edge of my foot arch. This will help get me to shift my center of mass better to the left side. For example, we could look at someone's pelvis and see that it's higher on the right side and it needs to be able to then push to the left better and drop. So you might say, okay, you need to recruit your glutes to do that and you need to turn them on because your right glute may be weaker than your left. So you could do endless glute activation exercises, but that, in my opinion, isn't a optimal approach for many people because you're not educating the glute to work with the part of the body that's going to allow that glute and cue that glute to work to push us to the other side, which would be that foot arch. Now you may be wondering, well, what foot arch do I need to go after then to help me push out of the side that I'm stuck in? How do I even know which side I'm stuck in? Well, there's a couple of visual cues that you're going to commonly see, but I encourage you not to make your decision entirely based off of these because visual presentations of posture might not be entirely accurate reflections of where you are shifting your body weight more so, where you may be stuck. Some people may be surprised to see that they have a higher hip on one side, but their pelvis is actually rotated to the right side, for example. So they're actually stuck facing the right side and they need to push out of their right side still. But one objective test that you can use, and this oftentimes does line up with what we see visually, is just an active pelvis rotation test. So what you would do is lay on the ground with your feet and knees together, feet flat, but you're in sort of this A-frame hook-lying position. And then you're going to let your knees and feet fall together to one side, stopping at the point at which you feel like like your opposite side shoulder is going to pop off. So once you rotate your knees, for example, to the left and your right shoulder starts to move noticeably, that's the end of the test. Whichever side is easier is likely the side that your pelvis and lumbar spine, lower spine, is rotated to and has an easier access turning to. What we need to do once we determine which side we need to work on is educate the foot arch how to work with the glute to create turning of the pelvis paired with pronation of the foot, because that pronation of the foot is going to cue our pelvis to start to turn towards the other side. So here's an exercise I really like for getting that and starting that process.
Now, I recommend doing this barefoot so that way you get the best leverage against the wall, but there's a couple of things we need to optimize our setup. We're going to have a yoga block or just something, a couple of books could work, stacked underneath the feet. That's going to allow us to best get the foot contacts we need for this exercise. We have a 90-degree bend at both our knees and our hips, so a right angle at both. And we have a very, very light band around the top of the knees. You don't want to use a heavy band. It will not help you. You want something that's pretty light or very light according to the band resistance. And we also have a towel roll underneath the side that's facing the ground. So this will be his left side in this instance right here. And the towel roll is not underneath the hip, but underneath the waist, the lowest ribs right there. And some sort of pillow that will allow you to keep your head nice and neutral and isn't side bending you to one side or the other or shoving your head forward or backward. So everything is in line right here. So to initiate this exercise, we need to first get our rib cage in a good position. So Jacob's just going to take a nice full exhale through his mouth. Sigh the air out for about 5 seconds. He's going to feel his rib cage come down. Good. Now, he wants to feel the foot contacts on the wall of his right first metatarsal head and inner heel. That's going to allow him to connect his glute working with his foot. And we want to make sure we're genuinely using our glutes. So the way that we do that is maintaining that ribs down position. He's going to reach this top hip for the wall away from him. So that's almost going to elongate the top side of him right here and crunch the bottom side out. It's almost like he's doing a little side crunch to that bottom side there. So he should feel that without flaring his rib cage, of course. Okay, so to recap so far, we've got the foot contacts on the right side. Left foot is also flat. We have the ribs down, and we have this hip reaching for the wall. He's going to slide his right knee ahead of his left knee, or the top knee ahead of the bottom knee, without ever losing that inner heel or first met head contact. And then he's going to slightly raise his knee towards the ceiling without ever losing those right foot contacts. So he never wants to roll the outside of his foot. He wants to make sure that he's maintaining those. So if that's as high as you can get, that's totally cool. You just want to make sure you're going forward first and then up. And if you do it right, you should feel your lower butt cheek on this side, this top side here, working really well. So Jacob is going to breathe in through his nose, out through his mouth, nice and relaxed. Check in with yourself. Is your neck activated? Is your low back activated? If it is, relax, because all you want to feel is this lower right glute working, this lower glute on the top side working, and maybe some downside side abs right there. So that'd be his left side abs. By far the biggest mistake here is people are going to want to use their top side ab wall to help them lift that knee up. So they're going to crunch here to get that. The reason why we have this reaching away is so that way we don't do that. So it's important that we keep our rib cage down, but we still have this intention to reach away. It may help you to take this side, this downside elbow, and push it into the floor to help you get a little bit of those downside side ups, but ultimately just keep the intention to keep all this relaxed in this ab wall while reaching this towards the wall. And that'll allow you to still feel that glute working really well. One thing we may coach you to do to get some more elongation in this top side is reach your top arm over you and just let it melt over your head. You don't want it to be too far behind you because that's going to extend you. Just kind of let it rest over that head right there and just chill out. And we may also coach you to push that elbow into the ground on the downside too to get some downside side abs. The other common mistake we see is the setup. So people will start too far away like this, and now they're kind of sliding their leg like this, and it just doesn't work at all. So we want to make sure that we're forward folded enough. We want to have at least a 90-degree angle right here. If not, maybe just a tiny bit less than that. to optimize our ability to push our foot arch into the wall and use it with our glute.
This type of full body approach that addresses the root cause is a key component of my beginner body restoration program. So if you like this and this is making sense to you, check out that program. It is designed for anyone to be able to do, and it addresses so many common movement and postural limitations like we're describing in this video. That will be linked down below in the description. This should objectively improve your pelvis rotation test to the side you are more limited on. So for example, if my pelvis was more rotated to, let's say, the right side, then I would do this laying on my left side using my right foot arch and my right glute. One consideration that's important here is understanding that if you don't have the ability to properly pronate your foot arch and be able to get it to lower in a healthy way, you may be limited in your ability to educate your foot arch to work with your glute. Because if you can't get pronation, how are you going to cue your glute to work with your foot arch in pronation? So if this is something that you may struggle with, if you have a higher arch or a very rigid foot arch that doesn't move very well, then I would recommend trying a pronation exercise before doing this. And this should really help you start to improve your foot's ability to work with the rest of your body. I'm going to link that exercise down below in the description.